I am watching U.S. Navy ships scrambling out of Bahrain right now, and you need to understand something. This isn't a drill, and the negotiation headlines you are reading on your phone are a calculated lie. At 2:45 Universal Time Coordinated, satellite imagery confirmed the guided missile destroyer USS Cole and two support vessels exited the port of Khalifa bin Salman at high speed, breaking standard departure protocols. This movement coincides with a sudden data blackout from the Manama Naval Communications Hub. The stakes here involve a total regional escalation that threatens the collapse of the petrodollar and risks a dark start to a conflict the Pentagon is not fully prepared to manage. While the mainstream press discusses a diplomatic thaw, we have identified 7 intercepted messages exchanged between the Trump transition team and Tehran that confirm no real talks are happening. Instead, these communications reveal a countdown to a definitive structural shift in the Middle East. Who is the third-party courier currently stationed in a safe house in Muscat? And why did the Swiss ambassador leave Tehran in the middle of the night under a heavy security detail? We are looking at an information arbitrage play where the public is being fed a narrative of peace, while the tactical reality on the ground suggests a terminal breakdown of the old world order. The Omani Backchannel has been the single point of failure for U.S.-Iran relations for over a decade, yet it has suddenly gone silent for the first time in 48 months. This shadow courier system in Muscat is where the real business of geopolitics happens, away from the cameras of Geneva or New York. However, the signals have flatlined. Message number 1 and message number 2 from the incoming Trump team were not invitations to a summit. They were a 14-word directive that acted as a diplomatic kill switch. According to sources familiar with the Omani readout, the message essentially demanded the total cessation of enrichment and the immediate withdrawal of proxy funding as a prerequisite for even acknowledging a reply. Imagine a secure room in Muscat, filled with the smell of stale coffee and the hum of encrypted servers, where a single laptop sits waiting for a ping that never comes. The bridge hasn't just been closed, it has been burned. The mainstream media is calling this opening a dialogue, but in military circles, we call this clearing the battle space. By setting impossible preconditions, the transition team is effectively neutralizing the diplomatic option before they even take office. But the messages themselves are not the real story. The true indicator of intent is the physical movement of assets that followed the third ghost signal at 3:14 a.m. To understand why the signal stopped, we have to look at the double game being played in the hallways of Mar-a-Lago, where the rhetoric of the deal is being used to mask a much more aggressive posture. There is currently an unprecedented rupture between the incoming State Department leadership and the Pentagon's CENTCOM command regarding the established rules of engagement. This institutional betrayal has led to a significant leak. We have learned that 38 senior military leaders recently received a classified briefing that suggests the current negotiation drama is actually a kinetic deception. While the public hears about phone calls and letters, the military is being told to prepare for a no-response scenario. This is the Netanyahu factor. The coordination between the incoming administration and Israeli intelligence has reached a level where the traditional Pentagon chain of command feels sidelined. Internal memos indicate that the military is prepping for a scenario where Iran. You may have suspected the system was fracturing, but the data now confirms it. There is a concept in military strategy most people never encounter called kinetic deception, the act of using diplomatic noise to mask the final positioning of strike assets. Keep a close eye on this, because the timeline is accelerating. While the generals in Washington argue over the legality of these preemptive shifts, the Iranian Ghost Fleet, a collection of tankers used to bypass sanctions, just turned off their transponders simultaneously in the Indian Ocean. This suggests that Tehran has also stopped believing in the negotiations and is moving its primary economic assets into defensive positions. But what happens when this deception hits your bank account? This isn't just about missiles in the desert. It is about the fundamental stability of your money. Now, we have to talk about your money, because this negotiation drama just hit the supply chain tripwire. Approximately $2.3 trillion in global trade passes through the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandeb every quarter. This is the math of war that the talking heads on television rarely calculate. Message number 4 and message number 5 were economic ultimatums sent to Tehran. These were not offers for a new nuclear deal. They were outlines for a total embargo designed to force a regime collapse within 90 days. The Trump team is signaling a return to maximum pressure on steroids, targeting not just oil, but the third-party financial networks in Turkey and the UAE that keep the Iranian economy breathing. Imagine the out-of-service signs at your local gas station, not because of a physical shortage today, but because the insurance premiums for oil tankers just spiked 400% in a single afternoon. When the maritime insurance market in London flinches, the global economy feels the tremor. Remember that Swiss ambassador who vanished from Tehran in the middle of the night? We have discovered he wasn't carrying a diplomatic letter or a peace proposal. He was carrying an exit strategy and a liability warning for the world's largest oil insurers. He was essentially telling the neutral parties to get out of the way. The energy tripwire is the most sensitive mechanism in the global order, and it has just been tripped. But the most dangerous message isn't about oil or insurance. It is the message that was never supposed to be written down, the one that deals with the finality of the current borders. We have reached the peak of this tension, what analysts call the valley of decision. The 38 generals who were previously vocal have suddenly stopped briefing the press. They have moved to a classified-only protocol, which usually precedes a major shift in theater operations. This is a silent coup of policy over traditional diplomacy. Message number 6 and message number 7 represent the final back and forth between the two powers. According to leaked intercepts, Tehran responded to the American ultimatum with a single set of geographic coordinates. In return, the Trump team responded with a single timestamp. There was no prose, no diplomatic fluff, and no room for interpretation. This is the language of high-stakes brinkmanship. The negotiations you see on the news are a performance for the 11 o'clock audience, a way to maintain the illusion of order while the real decisions are made in a SCIF beneath Palm Beach. The old world order is quietly, methodically falling apart. Are you still operating on the assumptions of the old world? Or are you ready for what comes next? There is one final coordinate, a tiny patch of desert in the Iranian interior, that just became the most expensive piece of land in human history because of what is reportedly buried beneath it. Before we reveal the implications of that location, we need to look at the shadow narrative that connects this Iranian move to a massive $78 billion corporate exit from the region. While the official readout from the transition team speaks of a desire for regional stability and a fair deal for the American taxpayer, the financial flows suggest a different reality. Market data indicates a massive surge in short positions against Middle Eastern logistics firms. If the inner circle truly believed a deal was imminent, we would see an influx of investment into regional infrastructure. Instead, we are seeing capital flight. The State Department's public stance is that the door is open, but the diplomatic cables mentioned by European allies tell a story of a door that has been double-bolted. Satellite imagery shows that while the rhetoric remains calm, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard has moved mobile missile launchers into the Zagros Mountains, a defensive posture that contradicts their public calls for de-escalation. There is a profound gap between the words spoken at a podium and the actions taken in the dark. Official statements are currently being used as a form of strategic fog, designed to keep the adversary guessing while the final pieces of the puzzle are moved into place. We are seeing a total divergence between the narrative for public consumption and the tactical reality of statecraft. You might think this drama is confined to the Persian Gulf, but the impact will be felt in every household. The Iranian tension is already triggering what some are calling the Silicon Flight, a $78 billion semiconductor manufacturing exit from a specific neighboring country that fears becoming a secondary target. This means that the electronics you use, the cars you drive, and the appliances you buy are all tied to this diplomatic countdown. When the Strait of Hormuz is threatened, it isn't just oil that stops. It is the flow of containers that fuel our modern life. Global trade is a delicate web, and the tension between Trump and Tehran is pulling at the most critical threads. We are looking at a potential spike in shipping costs that could rival the pandemic era. If the final timestamp is reached and no deal is made, the cost of living in Europe and North America will likely see a sudden, sharp increase as insurance rates and fuel surcharges are passed down to the consumer. This isn't just geopolitical chess. It is an economic storm brewing on the horizon. The 38 generals are reportedly moving their personal assets into a specific asset that mainstream banks are currently trying to regulate: gold and hard commodities. They know that when the lights go out on diplomacy, the value of paper promises vanishes. There are 3 realistic scenarios for the next 30 to 60 days. The first is a controlled collapse, where the Trump administration follows through on the total embargo, forcing Tehran to the table in a state of desperation. This would involve a massive increase in naval presence and the potential for small-scale naval skirmishes to enforce the blockade. The second scenario is a kinetic strike, triggered by a miscalculation on either side. Given the single coordinate and timestamp exchange, the probability of this is higher than it was 4 years ago. The military is already in a posture that suggests they are ready for a no-response event, meaning they are prepared to hit targets so effectively that the enemy cannot launch a counterattack. The third scenario is a black swan event, a sudden internal shift within Iran, driven by the economic pressure of the coming 90-day window. If the regime feels the walls closing in, they may choose to escalate in the Levant or Yemen to distract from domestic instability. Which of these 3 scenarios do you consider most likely? We are tracking the movements of the Swiss ambassador's security detail as a leading indicator of which path we are on. When the neutral observers leave, the theater is set for action. The 7 messages we have discussed today aren't a bridge. They are a funeral for the current status quo. No real talks are happening because both sides have already moved into post-collapse planning. The Bahrain scramble was the final physical proof that the era of managed tension is over and the era of decisive action has begun. This isn't about politics anymore. It is about preparation. The 38 generals were the final warning that the chain of command is bracing for impact. They want you to be afraid of the headlines. I want you to be informed by the data. The tripwire has been pulled.